The streets of Brussels were alive with ambition, a city where old money and new ideas collided in a battle for dominance. In this arena of wealth and strategy, a young boy named Alfred Lowenstein was learning the rules of power before he could even spell them. Born in 1877, Alfred was the son of Bernard Lowenstein, a man who had once been a German Jewish banker, but had reinvented himself as a Catholic businessman in the heart of Europe. His mother, the daughter of stockbroker Chrétien Dansaert, came from a world where fortunes were made and lost over dinner conversations. The family didn't just believe in wealth, they breathed it. From an early age, Alfred understood that money was not just paper, it was movement. Those who kept it still lost it. Those who made it flow controlled the world. This realization became his obsession. Unlike the young aristocrats around him, Alfred wasn't content with inheritance. He wanted control. He studied finance with a ruthless hunger, skipping childhood distractions in favor of mastering the unpredictable currents of the stock market. His mind was a machine, processing risks and rewards at speeds others couldn't comprehend. By the time he was in his late 20s, Alfred had already outpaced his father's legacy. By 1914, he had established his own banking empire, making bold investments in industries others dismissed as unstable. But Alfred saw what others didn't. The future was not in gold or land. It was in electricity. While Europe still clung to outdated power grids, he poured his wealth into electrical infrastructure, financing projects that would light up entire nations. His second bet was even more daring: artificial silk. In an era where natural fabrics dominated fashion, Alfred saw the potential of a new textile that would change the industry forever. Others scoffed. Alfred doubled down. The world laughed. Then the world paid him. By the mid-1920s, Alfred Lowenstein was no longer just a rich man. He was a force of nature. His net worth soared past 12 million pounds, the equivalent of billions today. He traveled in private luxury, not just with cars, but with something few men on earth could claim: his own aircraft. Yet, for all his success, Alfred was a man without peace. Rivals whispered behind his back. Business enemies sharpened their knives. Even those closest to him seemed uneasy. He had made too much, too fast, and in the world of unchecked ambition, there was always a cost. Alfred didn't know it yet, but the empire he had built was about to take a turn no one would see coming. He would soon board a plane, one that would take off like any other journey, but only some of the passengers would land. The summer evening of July 4th, 1928, was crisp and clear, a perfect day for travel. The world's richest men didn't wait in crowded terminals or stand in line for tickets. Alfred Lowenstein had his own plane. At Croydon Airport in England, a Fokker F-7/3M trimotor, a sleek, modern aircraft, stood ready. Its engines hummed with power, its polished body reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. It wasn't just a plane, it was a statement. Lowenstein had handpicked his company for the flight. 6 people would be with him aboard: Donald Drew, his experienced pilot, steady and reliable; Robert Little, the mechanic, responsible for keeping the engines alive; Fred Baxter, his loyal valet, who had served him for years; Arthur Hodgson, his secretary, keeper of schedules and documents; Eileen Clark and Paula Bidelon, 2 stenographers, who helped him record and dictate his financial strategies. These were trusted individuals, hand-picked, accustomed to wealth, accustomed to his wealth. As the Fokker's engines roared, the aircraft lifted into the sky, slicing through the air like a dagger. Their destination was Brussels, a flight Lowenstein had taken countless times before. He leaned back in his seat, checking his watch. Everything was as it should be. At 4,000 feet, the English Channel stretched out below, its deep blue surface reflecting the fading daylight. There was nothing unusual, no turbulence, no mechanical issues, just a quiet, routine flight. And then it happened. Lowenstein stood up from his seat. He straightened his jacket, gave a brief nod to his valet, and walked towards the back of the plane. His intent was clear. He was headed to the small lavatory, located at the rear. It was a simple enough routine, one he had done 1,000 times before, but this time was different. Minutes passed, then more. Silence. His valet, Fred Baxter, noticed first. The door had not reopened. There was no sound, no movement. Something was wrong. Lowenstein was gone. Baxter hesitated for a moment before finally standing up. He walked to the back of the aircraft, past the stenographers and the secretary, and reached for the lavatory door. It was empty, and the aircraft's exit door was open, flapping wildly in the wind. Panic set in. The richest man in the world, one of the most powerful financiers of the era, had vanished mid-flight. No one had seen him fall. No one had heard a scream. No one had any explanation. The pilot, Donald Drew, was alerted immediately. He was trained for many emergencies, but this was something else entirely. Without wasting time, he searched for a place to land. There were no emergency procedures for a missing millionaire. The aircraft made an emergency descent, landing on a remote beach near Dunkirk, France. The crew scrambled out, their faces pale with disbelief. They had lost a man, the most important man on board. But even as the authorities were alerted, one question loomed over everything. How does a billionaire simply disappear from the sky? The aircraft's landing near Dunkirk, France, sent ripples of confusion through the quiet coastal town. A plane coming down unexpectedly was unusual. A plane coming down without one of its most important passengers was unbelievable. The crew was shaken. Donald Drew, the pilot, was first out of the cockpit, his face pale. The stenographers, Eileen Clark and Paula Biddleon, held on to each other, whispering anxiously. The mechanic, Robert Little, was staring at the aircraft door, still stunned by what they had seen, or rather, what they hadn't. Where was Alfred Lowenstein? The French authorities arrived within the hour. The police, skeptical but professional, wasted no time questioning the crew. You say he just disappeared? Yes. Fell out of the plane? We don't know. It didn't make sense. A man of Lowenstein's stature didn't just vanish. Every detail of his life was accounted for, every transaction, every movement. Yet here he was, missing, somewhere over the English Channel, with no explanation. The layout of the Fokker F-7/3M added to the enigma. The lavatory was located near the rear exit door, but the two were separate. To reach the exit, one had to deliberately unlock and pull open a heavy, wind-resistant door. Not something a man would do by mistake, especially mid-flight. The aircraft door wasn't just any door, it opened outward. The force of the slipstream made it nearly impossible for someone to open it alone. Even if Lowenstein had leaned against it, it wouldn't have simply given way. Investigators were now faced with an impossible scenario. Did he fall? Did he jump? Was he pushed? Rumors spread faster than facts. The press pounced on the story, spinning wild speculation into front-page news. The accidental exit theory. Some believed Lowenstein had mistaken the exit door for the lavatory, opening it by accident and falling to his death. But this theory seemed weak. How could a man so precise, so calculated, make such a careless mistake? The suicide theory. Others suggested he had taken his own life, overwhelmed by financial pressures. But Lowenstein wasn't a man to break under stress. If anything, he thrived in it. The murder theory. The most sinister theory was whispered behind closed doors. Someone on the plane wanted him gone. But if it was murder, who had the motive? And more importantly, how did they do it? As investigators scoured the coastline, fishermen and sailors were put on alert. The world's richest man had fallen from the sky, and somewhere in the depths of the English Channel, his body was waiting to be found. And then the waiting began. For days, the English Channel churned with unanswered questions. Newspapers ran wild with speculation. Did a billionaire fall, jump, or was he pushed? Screamed the headlines. The world was watching, but no one knew the truth. Search teams combed the waters, but the channel was vast and unpredictable. For 2 weeks, there was nothing. No wreckage, no clothing, no sign of Alfred Lowenstein. Then, on July 19th, 1928, a grim discovery shattered the silence. Near Boulogne-sur-Mer, France, a fisherman spotted something floating in the waves. A body, bloated, broken, and barely recognizable. The currents had carried it far, but when authorities retrieved it, one thing became clear. It was Alfred Lowenstein. The body was examined by French authorities. The results raised more questions than answers. His skull was fractured. Bones were broken. No sign of a struggle before the fall. Everything pointed to one thing. He had fallen from a great height. But how? If it had been an accident, why hadn't the aircraft's violent slipstream sucked the door shut immediately? If it had been suicide, why would a man at the height of his power end his life in such a bizarre way? And if it had been murder, who had killed Alfred Lowenstein, and why? The moment Lowenstein's body was found, whispers turned into full-blown conspiracy theories. His empire, his £12 million fortune, his controversial investments, all were scrutinized. The rival's revenge. Had a business competitor orchestrated his death to stop his growing influence? The betrayal from within. Had someone aboard the plane, one of the 6 other passengers, been paid to get rid of him? The secret scandal. Was Lowenstein hiding something so dangerous that eliminating him was the only solution? His family's reaction only fueled the fire. Instead of demanding a full criminal investigation, they seemed almost eager to move on. His wife never even traveled to France to claim his body. Instead, she ordered a quick, quiet burial in an unmarked grave in Belgium. A billionaire, one of the most powerful men in the world, laid to rest as if he had never existed. The case was closed without a trial, without suspects, without justice. Officially, Alfred Lowenstein fell to his death. Unofficially, no one will ever know the truth. But one thing is certain, men like Alfred Lowenstein don't just disappear. Someone, somewhere, knew exactly what happened in the sky that day. And they took that secret to the grave. With Alfred Lowenstein's body found and buried, the world expected answers. But instead of clarity, the mystery only deepened. There was no official trial, no suspects, no arrests. The authorities treated it as a tragic accident and closed the case quickly. Far too quickly, some argued. But why? The Lowenstein family's reaction was nothing short of bizarre. His widow, Madeline, barely acknowledged his death. She did not demand an investigation. She did not travel to France to see his body. She simply moved on, inheriting his fortune without a word. His business associates, men who had made millions thanks to him, showed little interest in the details of his demise. They quickly divided up his empire, selling off assets as if Lowenstein had been gone for years. Where was the outrage? Where was the demand for justice? Instead, it was the newspapers, the public, and conspiracy theorists who asked the real questions. Theory number one, a simple accident. Some still believed Lowenstein had mistakenly opened the wrong door while looking for the lavatory. But skeptics pointed out the flaw. The aircraft door was not easy to open. He would have needed deliberate force to unlock it. The wind pressure should have slammed it shut immediately. The odds of him accidentally falling out were low, impossibly low. Theory number two, suicide. Another theory suggested that Lowenstein had taken his own life, but those who knew him dismissed it outright. He had no history of depression. He was at the peak of his power. He had big business deals ahead. Would a man on top of the world choose to jump? Theory number three, murder in the sky. The most chilling possibility, someone on the plane had killed him. But if someone pushed him, there was a problem. No one reported a struggle. There were no bruises or signs of a fight on his body. So if it was murder, it had to be planned perfectly. Was he drugged or knocked unconscious before being thrown out? Did one of the crew members open the door while the others stayed silent? Was the entire crew in on it? The deeper people looked, the clearer one thing became. Someone had a reason to want Alfred Lowenstein gone. His family, his wife inherited his entire empire, his business rivals. Lowenstein had been shaking up the industry, making powerful enemies. Someone on the plane? Could one of the 6 passengers have been paid off? Yet, despite these questions, no one was ever charged. The world simply accepted that one of its richest men had vanished from the sky, and no one could explain how. The case was closed, but the legend was just beginning. Alfred Lowenstein was buried in an unmarked grave, as if the world wanted to forget him. But history doesn't forget men like him. A billionaire vanishing mid-flight was too strange, too suspicious to be ignored. The whispers never stopped. Decades later, people still ask, what really happened in the sky that day? Officially, it remained an accident. Unofficially, the theories only grew stronger. If it was an accident, how did he open a door nearly impossible to open mid-flight? If it was suicide, why didn't he leave behind any clue, any sign of despair? If it was murder, how did the killer ensure silence from the others on board? Every scenario seemed impossible, and yet one of them had to be true. Years later, aviation experts studied the Fokker F-7A/3M trimotor's door again. Their conclusion? The door could not be opened accidentally at high altitude. It would take a deliberate effort, or multiple people, to force it open. But if this was true, how did the 6 other people on board not hear or see anything? Unless, of course, they were told to stay silent. Lowenstein was powerful, but power makes enemies. He controlled industries, upset old money, and disrupted entire economies. Some believe he may have uncovered a financial scandal too dangerous to expose, and eliminating him was the only way to keep it buried. If he had lived longer, what secrets would he have revealed? What happened on that plane will never be fully known. Everyone who was there took their secrets to the grave. But one thing is certain: billionaires don't just vanish. Doors don't just open. A man like Alfred Lowenstein doesn't just fall from the sky, unless someone wanted him to. The truth is lost in the wind over the English Channel, and there it will remain forever.